Hi, this is Brandy Murray with Scrap Girls, and today I'm going to be showing you how to blend a photograph into background in a couple of different ways. There's so many different ways to do things in Photoshop, so I'm going to show you a couple. It's going to depend on what you're using as far as background and photo. So we're going to start with the first one, and I'm going to take this black and white photograph of Lily and essentially show you how to blend it into this soft, light, tan background from the Coastal Collection. Now, when you're using black and white photographs, or any photographs really, what you're going to want to do is make sure that you have a good contrast. A photograph that's really light, the edges and the highlights and shadows are not going to pop out well, so you might want to make sure that you take the photograph and bump up the contrast and the brightness on it before you start playing around. I'm going to show you how to do that. I've taken this photograph of Lily, and I'm using Photoshop CS5. That's the interface you're seeing here. If you're using a Photoshop Elements version, your interface for Photoshop may look a little different, but the steps I'm going to be showing you are essentially the same. So I'm going to be creating a new fill adjustment layer and choosing brightness and contrast. Now you can also get this through the image adjustments, brightness, contrast, or a similar tool at the top if you're using Elements. So what I want to do here is I've chosen the brightness contrast. I've added it to my photograph. I'm going to bump the contrast up some and take the brightness down. And you can see by turning this off and on what a difference that makes in the photograph. So once I get that the way that I want it, I'm going to flatten the image and take it on to my layout here. We'll take a look at this. Now, we're working with this. Now, the basic things you need to know about when you're blending a photograph in is the basic points of it is changing the blending mode of the object you're blending. And there are three basic blending modes that work really best. I'm going to show you those. The first one is color burn. And you can see with color burn, it begins to take on a lot of the textural part of the background. The second one is overlay. And because we're using this light background, you can see it kind of gives it a really beautiful light glow about it. And the third one is luminosity. And I like luminosity because if you have a paper in the background that has a little bit of a color in it, it's going to start to blend in through the photograph. But let's go back to normal for this part. And I want to show you, for example, like when we have the color burn on, how to get rid of these edges. Now there's a few different ways to do that. I'm using a mask from the Background Blender's masks, but you can use a soft brush to show you, have you take a look at that. Here, one of these here with a soft edge around it, that will also work. Any grunge brush that you want to use, that will also work. So, but I'm just using this one because I like the shape and it's working for my layout here. And I'm going to kind of position it where I want it to kind of cover her face on top. Now once I do that, I'm going to drag that underneath, and I'm going to clip the photo to this mask by right clicking while I have that layer highlighted and choosing Create Clipping Mask. There's a couple of different shortcuts that everybody uses. In Photoshop, it's Control-Alt-G will also do it, and if you're using Photoshop Elements, Control-G will do the same. And you can see now, because the photograph is clipped to this really soft mask, that the photograph takes on these really soft edges. Now, it looks great like this too. There's no need to change the blending mode if you don't want to, but if you want to, you want to make sure that you click on the mask itself when you change the blending mode and not the photograph. So we're going to change that to color burn, and you can kind of see how now you get this soft look. Let's take a look at it with overlay, where you get the white glowing look, and the other one with luminosity, where some of the color from the background paper is showing through. Okay, that's our first way of how to do that. Now let's take a look at this particular layout that I did for Coastal, and I'm going to show you how I got this effect using some of the same steps we just did. Now here is the original photo in color, and I'm using a, let me disable this for a minute so you can take a look. I'm using a mask from the Background Blender's 2 papers, and only because they're much larger and they cover more of the page So that's what's working for this particular layout. So I've added that, and I've added the photograph on top. And again, we're going to use the same technique as we did before. I right click and choose Create Clipping Mask so that the photograph takes on the shape of the mask. And then you're going to click on the mask, and that's the one you're going to change the blending mode of. For this particular layout, I used color burn. So you can see now that the photograph begins to take on the textural part of the paper. Now sometimes even when you have a mask, you still might get areas that you don't want to see. I've used a layer mask added to this particular paper mask, and I'm going to enable that so that kind of shows you how I softened it up. Now I'm not going to get too much into those type of masks, but I will tell you that if you're using Photoshop Elements, another way to do it is to click on the mask itself, click on your eraser brush. Let me show you, as you can see that this is the eraser brush here, the eraser tool, and you want to choose a really soft edge brush. Make sure that you're clicked on the mask itself, and then you can just softly go around your photograph to kind of blend it in a little bit more, however you like. And you're just erasing the parts of the mask. You're not touching the photograph at all, but you're just erasing parts of the mask. Now, because as you noticed on this particular layout, I have a really dark area here that I want to be blended a little bit more in. I've added this brush on top of it from the Sunburst brush set that just came out with Coastal, and I'm also going to clip this to the mask at the bottom by right clicking on my mouse and choosing Create Clipping Mask, and then it kind of takes on the same mode as the mask itself. So because this mask is in color burn, anything that you clip to it on top of it will also take on those attributes. Now you don't have to use the Sunburst. You can use, again, a soft brush like we did before, and you can just kind of brush over those areas to kind of in white for this particular case. Oop, I have it in black, and that's not going to help, is it? But if I cover over it in white a little bit, you'll see how it lightens up a little bit. And you can change that blending mode if you want it to show through a little bit more or not. I mean, change the opacity, not the blending mode. And you can see how that will help with some of the dark and light spots. And again, this is how this ended up in the end and what this layout looked like. Now, the last way I'm going to show you is by using a brush. And in this case, I'm going to create a new layer on top of my background. And I'm going to open up a kissing photo of Lily and Wesley. And I'm going to drag that onto my paper and close that down. Now, I want this blank layer to be above my photo. And I'm just going to change it to black so I can see what it looks like. I'm going to use a brush from the Junk in the Trunk brush set because it's really grungy and I like the way that it looks. It's going to look good with this concrete. So on my blank layer above, I'm just going to start brushing on the areas that I want to show up, essentially just right down the middle. And once I've got that done, I'm going to drag my brush that I just created below the photograph, and again we're going to do the same thing as we did before. I'm right clicking and choosing Create Clipping Mask, and you can see that the photograph takes on the edges that you just created with the brush. Now again, if you need to adjust anything, you can go to your eraser, and I will use the same brush as I did before, but I will make it a little bit smaller. And by making sure that you're on the brush layer, not the photograph layer, you can go in and kind of get rid of any edges that you don't want and change it like that. Now, to blend it in, again, like we did before, you're going to change that blending mode of the mask, not the photo, but of the mask. We'll take a look at what color burn looks like. And because this has a little bit of a pattern in it, the photograph doesn't show up well. But so let's take a look at overlay. Overlay gives a really nice soft look if you want just a hint of a photograph peeking through. But in this case, I'm going to use luminosity because I really want the photograph to stand out. Now I'm going to hold down Shift and click on both of those layers and hit this little chain button at the bottom, and that links those layers together so whenever I move them, they move together. Now let's take a look at this layout complete. And that's what this layout looks like once I've added some embellishments and my own journaling. So I hope that gives you a great starting point of where to start with blending your photographs into your background. And we hope to get to see some of the things that you've tried with this few techniques in the gallery. And we thank you for watching. Have a great day.